All right, we're seeing first attendees coming in. Welcome, everyone. We're waiting a few more minutes for people to get settled, and then we'll start. And maybe before that, yeah, where's everyone calling in from? Maybe add into the chat where you're from. In the meantime, Blaise, Brian, question for you. How many years do we have until AI is going to destroy the world?
You want to start, Brian?
Sure.
And I want to hear from the participants as well.
I'm going to take the contrarian take and say that it's not going to destroy the world, and we'll be able to adequately harness it in the right ways, but it'll be very bumpy along the way. So that's my optimistic take of the future.
I think it was already a very biased question that I just asked for the year, not whether. But it's interesting that you call it the contrarian view. So you think the majority thinks it will?
I'm a delusional optimist, but I'm a little pessimistic with AI. And I actually just saw the movie Megan on either like Netflix or Amazon like 2 nights ago. It's about a roboticist who builds this robot for her niece, and ultimately it goes on a killing stage.
Are you spoiling the movie in case we haven't seen it?
It's yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll save you like 2 hours. It's not worth it.
All right. So Kenny says we're already about 25 years behind Skynet. So we actually made it longer than Hollywood movies predicted.
Well, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
What do you think, Christian?
I think I have the pessimistic worldview. I think that there's always this in our lifetime. I think it's the reason why there are no aliens. I think ultimately AI is going to destroy every intelligent being. But then actually AI should be there. So yeah.
I think it's like the natural progress of a civilization to eventually create AI, and then AI kills everybody, and that's why there's no advanced civilizations.
I think so.
Well, let's enjoy it while it lasts.
That's it.
All right. Now let's come to a more fun topic. So everyone, thanks for joining. Today, we're going to talk about 3 advanced selling tips to accelerate deals and win more. And we have 2 people very close to my heart and to UserGems. We have Blaise and Brian. So please introduce yourself.
I'll go first. So I'm Brian Murray, partner and COO at Craft Ventures. Honored to be partnered with UserGems in that capacity, and also co-founder of Cabal, which is relevant for the topic of this this webinar. So happy to be here. Thank you guys for hosting.
So thanks for being here, Brian.
Thank you for the invite, Christian and team. Yeah, Blaise Bev, Enterprise AE here at UserGems, and been with them for coming up on 3 years now. So I'm also a massive Cabal super fan, so I think that's why they threw me on this.
Excellent. All right, so I'm gonna kick it off with a little bit of information, and then we're gonna chat. Why is my screen sharing always so bad?
We saw something for a second.
Oh yeah.
Well, it said it was you were sharing. Yeah, AI is taking over as we speak.
I think I would actually call this human error. So maybe we actually need AI for this. I don't understand. It says yeah. Resume share. All right. So you're seeing my screen now? Is that right?
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, excellent. All right, so we saw the participants. That's the topic we're talking about. I'll kick us off a little bit. So we've all seen the statistics and heard about it. There's a whole lot going on right now. that makes selling a whole lot harder than it was in the past. So there are these, we've all seen sales cycles got longer, Salesforce has the data, certainly true. We've seen smaller deal sizes. So not only are we spending more time on deals, but the ACV we're receiving from them is smaller, which means that if we have a quota to hit, we need to hit more deals. But at the same time, we're also interacting with more people. There are now way more stakeholder in a deal. I think we've all seen the CFO being part of it in the evaluation at the very end as well. Blaise, Brian, any thoughts or comments there?
As a seller, the buying committee it is ballooned to the point where I think a $20,000 deal has the same amount of eyes on it from a $200,000 deal. And so that I think has been the biggest one for me, because you could have buy-in from 9 out of 10 people, but that one person could throw a grenade on the deal, and that's just like getting in front of that as early as possible. So yeah, the stakeholder thing has been, I think, over the past, like since the market has been a little wonky, like this has been the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big reasons we talk about this topic here, because it means how can we get all the stakeholders involved and on our side that we need, right?
Yeah, what's interesting about this is also true of the venture process. So if you think about like venture funding, the deals are taking longer. There's more people on the investment committee opining. People are taking their time to make good decisions. And if you think about what that means, it's less capital is flowing into the tech ecosystem.
Absolutely.
That means less budgets, which means harder to sell. So it all kind of is interrelated. And I think that what we're hoping to share on this webinar is, so what do you do about it? Like, we could just hand wring and whine about it, or we can try to adjust our game. And that's why when the three of us were kind of brainstorming about this topic, we figured it would be a good opportunity to share some of the things that we've seen work well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've done the crying, so I think there was time for that, and now we see what we can do about that. I think it's also really interesting where we are now in terms of like what this means for the buying. So we all know about until 2 years ago, it was FOMO, the fear of missing out. Technology was bought left and right. It was like the wild, wild west of buying. And now it's actually FOMO. It's the fear of messing up. Budget is so tight. I don't want to buy technology that might then not be used in the organization or might not have the desired outcome. So I'm much, much more cautious. And for me as a seller, it's really important to understand that mindset, because that's really what's going on in the head of my buyer. So if I know that this is going on, how can I combat that? Or what does this mean what should I be doing about that? And once again, that also means like, who are the people that I need to convince, that I need to bring in, and we'll talk about that. And then maybe the last thing before we go into the conversation, because as if this all wasn't already difficult enough, there's one more thing that's really, really recent that's going on. It's that Gmail enforces much, much stricter rules in terms of outbound. So the spam detection on Gmail is much harsher. Basically, I'm less able to send a lot of cold emails. And all of this together means that whatever we did in the past isn't working as well now anymore. And it means we need to change. And so we want to talk about 3 things today. So coming to the agenda and to Blaise and Brian. So we want to see, how can we identify people who can open doors for us when we want to sell to an organization? And it's both about open doors as well as then accelerate deals. The second one is, how can I ask the investors of the companies, the advisors, any exec for introductions to my target accounts? And then the last one, exactly how do I leverage any relationships that I have, past champions, to de-risk this fear of messing up and to accelerate deals? And this falls into 3 categories. So we have the previous champions. So these are people that have already bought the product in the past. This means they bought the product, they moved to a new organization, and wherever they're going could be a sales opportunity for me. It means the investors and advisors. So anyone that invested in your company, anyone that's an advisor, board members, VCs that your company works with, as well as then your executives. And we're now going to talk about this in more detail. So Brian, you want to talk about how to work best with investors and advisors for that?
Yeah, for sure. So let me start by saying that investors, advisors, they do want to help. So that's the good news. They want to help. Christian, I think we may have lost your screen. I don't know if you...
Yeah, no, I wanted to get the focus back to you.
Okay, cool. So they want to help, but the problem usually is that the company who's asking them for help isn't synthesizing the request enough before they send it over. And then it leads to like a kind of cumbersome, uncomfortable exchange where the company might say like, hey, do you know any CTOs that you can introduce me to? And then the investor is like, well, you need to be more specific. Like what stage, what location, what vertical, what amount of funding, and what do you want me to say? So there's all these points of friction along that request path that can be addressed. And so you can get the help of these people, because when you do get their help, it can be extremely powerful for a lot of reasons, which we can get into. But
I think, Brian, like in your case, it's like there's this question of how can I be helpful? But investors actually really want to be helpful. You just need to be very specific in that request.
Yes, totally. Yeah, make it easy on them is the TLDR.
Brian, I remember like when we first started going back and forth, I fell to the, hey, Brian, could you introduce me to this VP of sales? And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, so I learned from you that context is everything, and just firing off like a request just will like fall by the wayside. So we could like talk all about how to properly ask and everything. But yeah, I do remember that from what the first couple of times I've tapped you on the shoulder, and it was a little scary being a rep asking an investor and an advisor, but when it clicks, like deals just happen to accelerate at like a clip that it's like 2x or 3x that we usually see.
Yeah. And the psychology of the investor is they want to help you win. I mean, literally they're incentivized for you to win. What they also love is feeling like they had a hand in a closed won deal. So closing the loop creates that like Pavlovian response. So if you do have an investor that helps you or an advisor, don't forget to follow up with them when you close the deal and say, hey, your support led to this deal closing. And what that's going to do is motivate them to do it the next time. Just one other quick point on that is you should think you should sort of separate your requests into cold door openers versus deal acceleration. On the deal acceleration, if the person that the investor is reaching out to is already considering your product, it's way easier for them to put in a good word. Be like, hey, I heard you're evaluating UserGems. Just want to let you know I'm a huge fan. The team is awesome. You're going to love it. That is like a very low lift for the investor because you're not asking your friend to do something new. They're already doing it. Whereas a cold opener is a bigger request. And so you should just be mindful of the difference between those two styles of requests.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. So Brian, maybe let's talk through the scenario of opening the door. Like how would Blaise best like start from the beginning and making sure that you can help them open the door?
Yeah, so it starts with creating a target list, which sales teams are already doing. So which accounts am I going after? Then you can figure out which of your investors have the best connections to people at those accounts. So this is where it's useful to get a lot of your investors and advisors to participate in this. This is something that Cabal makes easy. So you have your target list, then you see who has the most relevant connections. Then you can do one of two things. Either you can reach out to them and say, hey, I saw you're connected to so-and-so. Are you willing to help with a referral or an intro? That can be the initial outreach. Or you can pre-draft a message for them to send to that contact to skip a step. And that really depends on how close you are with the investor, how relevant the relationship is with that connection. if you have really engaged investors, you can skip that first step and just draft a message for them to send. Then all they need to do is click send, and you've gotten what you wanted. Again, the key is like, keep it simple. Yeah, here's a slide about we call it like a connection check, which is, hey, I see you're connected to so-and-so. Are you comfortable making an introduction? That's courteous, because it's not presumptive that this person is going to make the intro. You're just asking. And then the one on the right is, you assume that this investor advisor will make the intro, and you pre-draft the message for them to send. So again, it kind of depends on the relationship you have with the particular investor.
Yeah, it's something that as I'm thinking about on a day-to-day basis, I usually will like look at my open book of business and see who I could tap on the shoulder and give context. So kind of like that connection check, and then also more of like planting the goodwill seeds if they just want to say, hey, heard you're checking them out. And that's Brian, we've been on a couple of opportunities together where you've just planted the seeds and have not even been like, hey, check them out. It's just like, that's awesome that you guys are evaluating their team.
Yeah, good point, Blaise. So one thing that people usually get wrong when they try this for the first time is make a very direct request for an intro. Like, you assume that the investor is literally going to facilitate the intro on the first outreach. And you might be better off thinking of this in terms of deal influence, or almost like marketing, basically. Because if you get your investors just to put in a good word with the decision maker, that will smooth out the deal process. You basically, like, that buyer who may have been sort of ambivalent to what you're doing, now they know about it and their friends said good things about it. So when your champion brings it up to them, they'll be more inclined to give it a good look. So again, and you have to be sensitive to what the investor is willing to do. Like, sometimes they will be willing to just ask for the introduction, and other times they're more comfortable just putting in a good word. Both are very valuable.
I think it's a little bit, you're borrowing the credibility of this person. And I think this goes back to what we said about the fear of messing up. Like, if I'm the buyer, if I'm the buyer of this tool, and I get a message from, let's say, my board member or an investor in the company that vouches for the product, or they've seen it used with a different portfolio company, that gives me a lot of credibility to make that decision. So as Brian said, it's really for both, like, but as the deal accelerator, or as the last step, just to make sure that this person feels comfortable buying the product.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue to the champion outreach, because, like, if we boil it all down, what are we talking about? We're using influence, as you said, Christian. And from an investor's perspective, the influence is largely because they've got a pretty good network. It's a pretty senior network. These people trust them. They know they're not going to shill some trash product. It's going to be good. From the past champions perspective, these people are authentic because they, like, literally used your thing. They like what you created. And so when they advocate for it, it's because they have direct experience using it. So back to the bigger point of how do we operate in this, like, less spam, AI heavy world? Well, we need to go through these routes that are more proven, where there's built-in credibility.
Absolutely. I think that for me, the thought of, I always have like the cold outreach as kind of like, if I want to go after an account, I have the cold outreach as like the last option I want to do. So the question is, how can I maybe get access to someone in this organization through someone? And so Blaise, like, maybe walk us through, if you're targeting, we have these whatever it takes accounts. If you, like, whatever it takes, how do you target such an account?
Yeah, so two things. The two major signals is past relationships. Do we know anybody that came from a former customer that's now within that account? And then also the advisor route. So I pretty much start here, and it's now, warm outbound is like the new outbound. And so what I'll typically do, and I'm pretty fortunate to be able to work here because it's kind of a cheat code. And so if I have a list of whatever it takes accounts, I'll essentially just get an email that a past champion has joined that account. And then if this is either an open opportunity or it's just breaking into that account, that's usually where I'll tailor my message to make it relevant so the person knows exactly like what my request is about. And then from there, I'll also check out, do we have an investor or an advisor that's part of the C-suite? So you're essentially swarming the account with relationships, and that's creating mind share for people to get excited and possibly open the door or have the deal accelerate through the cycle.
I think the swarming the account comes back to more stakeholders being involved and more stakeholders having to give the sign up. So how do you typically, like, at what point are you bringing in like additional people, or are you swarming the account through investors or through Cabal?
Yeah. And again, I think this comes down, this is like where there's an art and science in sales. Like if you, within your first 1 to 3 calls, have a great relationship with your champion and they're open to opening doors, then I'll typically wait till like mid-cycle to start bringing in the execs or the advisors. But if it's someone I could tell that's like, they're a little bit more guarded and skeptical, rightfully so, given how many times people have been burned in the past, that's usually where like I'll check out Cabal pretty early on in the deal just to make sure that it doesn't die. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing to add to that, when we're talking about both of these plays, the past champions who changed jobs and also investors, advisors, these are evergreen programs. What I mean by that is you are, as a business, you're acquiring new customers constantly. And so that customer base is they're going to be changing jobs. So this is like it's like the gift that keeps on giving as time goes on. So it's like, in that sense, an evergreen program. You might think, well, investors, I have my investors, that list of people is not going to change much. That's true, especially nowadays when it's harder to get funding, but you will get new investors every time you fundraise. That's one method. And then also there's this, this is kind of a new age philosophy or strategy, but having an advisor program where you are engaging either customers or friends or vendors or whatever, and making them an advisor to your company, maybe sharing some equity with them. Now you have another node on your network that can help you with these deals. And everybody has, thousands of connections. So the more you can build up this graph of people want to help you win, the better off your company will be.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think especially, once again, I always say this, but especially right now, like the harder the cold out it gets, the more you need to build this network. So I think that there are some tips in terms of how to best work with, like, whether it's an advisor or an investor in that fashion.
Yeah.
Brian, for you, like as an investor, like, I guess when would it become too much? Because I imagine like I'm just one rep and I reach out to you maybe once every 2 weeks. And I guess this is on a case by case basis, but like from your background and understanding, like what would be the right balance for requests for you?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. It's worth spending a minute or two on it. Because my belief is that if I believe in a product, I'm happy. I believe that I'm helping the people I'm reaching out to introduce this product to them, especially UserGems. I describe it as found money, not to like plug you guys too much, but so I'm happy to do it. What I don't want is my friends to feel like every time they hear from me, I'm hawking some new product. That's what I don't want.
Yeah.
So I'm sensitive to that. But if it were possible for me to ping my entire network, but only like once every 6 months about a product, then I can get out thousands of these messages, and not any one of my contacts would feel like I'm just this, traveling salesman. But that is, so if that were possible, that'd be awesome. But that's not the experience of the investor, because every time they send one of these, it feels like they're doing it to the same person, even if they're doing it to different people. So all that is to say, it would be great if we can develop a system where the investors know that they're not overburdening their contacts, but are following through and supporting their companies. And I think until we get that system dialed in, the best is just to have an open dialogue with your investors and ask them, like, is this too much? Are we good? And they'll be straight with you for the most part.
That's good feedback. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm always feeling, I'm like, I hope this is not too much, or I'm like, we've got another one for you, Brian. You think you could do it? But yeah, appreciate the context.
Again, happy to do it, especially if I know that these little nudges affect the deal and increase the odds of success. It's like, it's a win-win. So
I think that's really important to point out, like the last point, close the loop. Like, I think you are more motivated making these introductions if you see that they work. And I feel like that actually applies to everything. Like, this is not only the advisors, but anyone that does like a reference call, anything, like close the loop, because if we're helping someone, we really want to know, did this actually help?
yeah. Yeah, we tried to productize this a bit for in Cabal. So we have, because we connected the CRM and then we could see where the requests are happening, if someone helped and the deal closes, it changes to closed won, we'll ping all the people who helped with that deal and send them this message, letting them, like in this case, Clue Default is a craft portfolio company, good friends with Jason at Clue. Made that introduction, 2 great products, and Clue signed with Default. And then I got this notification, and it just, this is what people want, is they want to feel like they did something important. And what's crazy is, like, this already happens. It's not like what we're talking about is a new thing. It's just what UserGems and Cabal are trying to do is just make it easier and more accessible. And before these products existed, when I would make an intro, like I would hear in a board meeting, a quarter later, that they closed the deal that I like made an intro to or whatever, and they don't even remember that I made the intro. It's like such a lost opportunity. So I think it's just a good chance to put out more goodwill into the universe.
Yeah. One more thing that I want to highlight that Ray wrote in the chat, like talking again about the advisor program, because I think that the one thing is obviously the investors, which is specifically, that's something the founders can influence. And I think there's a whole, you have a few articles around how you should make sure that there are a whole lot of angels, so you have more people to help you. But the advisor program is actually something that, let's say, the marketing team can create in an organization. So maybe if you want to quickly talk about that for a second, of how you've seen this being done.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it should be done a lot more than it currently is done. And the starting point is for companies to realize that their equity is their own currency. It's a form of currency. And teams that understand that currency and can wield it, like know how to use it as a incentive mechanism, will unlock a bunch of like interesting creative opportunities. So the program that I advocate for is equipping the go-to-market team and all the functional leaders to know that if you meet someone who's excited about what we're doing, authentically interested in what we're doing, then we should make them an advisor and recognize them for their contributions to our company. And we're not talking about like giving up, 10% of the company. It doesn't need to be a lot of equity for it to be a meaningful give to someone. And I've written, there's a lot to this. I actually just did a webinar with a lawyer about how to set these things up. But, and I think that's the main reason holding a lot of people back is that, they got to wrap their heads around ISOs versus NSOs, investing and post-termination exercise periods and all this other mumbo jumbo. But the bottom line is it's very doable. It's not that complicated. The leadership team just needs to commit to it and make it part of their, typical operating practices.
And so, ultimately, everyone already has some kind of advisor program, or like you have like a cap typically, but making sure that you incentivize them as well to help you means that you can reach out to them for these introductions, and you don't, in a sense, feel bad making them work for you. So it really, really helps both ways. And I think the most important thing that you said was this authentic. I think that's what's really absolutely the best about this program is if these are people that bought your product already in the past, they're using it, they've seen a whole lot of success, make them your advisors. Because as you say, Brian, like if they recommend you to someone else, they're actually like, their real thought is, I'm helping this other person because I've been successful with that.
Yeah. And not to belabor the point, and Blaise, curious to hear your point of view, but I actually love making people earlier in their careers advisors. Like people who are up and coming, they have so much energy, they get really excited, and if you make them an advisor, it is like extremely meaningful and like they're honored by it. And it just doesn't happen enough. And you're also providing these people with an opportunity to build their own portfolio. Like that's a cool idea for these people, is to build a portfolio not through angel investing, but through their efforts and their enthusiasm and excitement. So yeah, I'm a big believer in it, and I think it's the future. Unless AI kills us all before then.
Yeah. No, and Brian, I think it's funny too. Like when we first started using Cabal, I was like, if this ever gets taken away from us, I'm gonna like jump ship. And so like you really do mean it, because like you made me an advisor, and I'm not just like plugging Cabal all the time, but it's like this is a product where I'm like, this is part of my day-to-day repertoire that is so important. And so just want to say thank you again. Like it's cool being able to be able to help you guys scale and make introductions where I can.
Yeah, I mean, it's a case in point. So yeah.
It's funny actually, talking about the advisory role. I think some of the most raving UserGems fans have been our customers that we've transferred into the advisory role, Christian. So like, and it's funny, like our cab members, after we work with people for like pre-sale side could be 3 to 6 months. So you build these relationships with people as like a seller. And I'm like, it's sad to see them go. So when they join the advisory role, it's nice that we're able to continue the relationship. And if I'm stuck on a deal, I could just, they're a Slack or a text away. And I see that as a huge part of my motion with unsticking deals a lot of the times. Like there could be something that's happening behind the scenes that we don't know about, but having access to these raving fans who are customers who are now part of the advisory board, that's been like a huge part of the UserGems success is just making fans of the product advisors. Yeah.
And I think this is also a really good segue where these two products very much align in that. Like we've also seen, like basically when you say unstuck or accelerate, like we've also seen that if a past champion joins one of my open up accounts, I think Blaise, you're all over this the second it happens, but we've seen that twice the win rate, larger deal size, and shorter sales cycle. And so this means the more you can make a raving fans turn them advisor and see when they change their job, the more it impacts really your business. And this comes back to, once again, the fear of messing up.
Yeah, it's like literally the inverse of the problems facing sellers today. So yeah. And it's also like we have these stats, which is awesome, but it's also just obvious. It's intuitive that would work better. If I hear from, it's like in venture capital, when we are diligencing a company, to talk to people who we trust, who are users of a product, that is the highest signal piece of information we can get. It's much higher signal than if we, the company that we're diligencing, if they give us a reference customer, because you never really know, like, is it a friend or whatever, but if we have a trusted relationship with someone who uses a certain product, we get like very clear visibility into the success of the product, the potential, the problems. And so if you can get your champions to be advocating for you at their next job, it's just so credible.
It's funny as you talk about just like how powerful word of mouth is. A deal this past quarter was stuck after working 3 months with a below the line type of manager. And I got a notification that a former champion landed within this deal. And essentially what I've done was just tap that person on the shoulder, just referencing that we were having these conversations. And then what that champion did was then go to his boss and say, hey, I used this product in the past. You should check them out. And he let me know that he was like, hey, I actually just talked with my boss XYZ. I'm a big fan. And then from there, I took that signal and I went to his boss and I said, hey, heard you spoke with Tim. He was a big fan of UserGems in a former life, and just with no CTA. And then that SVP said, great, could we actually set up time to chat? So it's like these weird little mechanisms of like how to navigate an organization, but doing it in like a thoughtful way that either will like unstick deals or accelerate. And again, like all the metrics are there, but it's like, it's so intuitive, and it's like the one signal when I see a notification come through, I'm like, it's a sigh of relief. I'm like, okay, there's like a life vest here.
And we have this messaging is on our website. So if you saw it really quickly, you can also see this on our website. But I think, Blaise, what you said, what I found interesting is also that this is also really valuable. It doesn't have to be the buyer that changed their job, right? It could be the end user that previously used the product and that joined the organization. And I think that's what you do so particularly well in making sure that you bring these end users into the conversation, even if they are not the ones making the decision.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember like when I was working at startups and we were considering buying a new tool, one of the most important things was talking to the team who's going to be the end users and asking if anybody had experience with that tool. And it was like, okay, that's like the best information we can get to make the right decision. So it's already happening. Whether or not we influence it, it is happening. The question is, can you influence it? And the answer is yes, but this is why we call this advanced selling techniques. It's like, you got to put some energy into it, but it's worth it, especially now more than ever.
Yeah.
Way
like
more
it.
so than mass emailing into the void.
You can't do that anymore. No, I mean, I think one of the things that, especially like, for example, if we sell to sales and marketing, RevOps is really concerned, is a tool becoming shelfware. Like there's so many different tools. I want to make sure it's getting used. So as Brian said, they're going to talk to end users and say like, can you see yourself using this? So if they do that anyway, let's make sure they talk to the right end users or the people that we want them to talk to. How can we influence that?
Christian, for you, when people on our team are evaluating tools, like if we're looking to make a purchase, do you see reps like bring you into the fold through like multi-threading or any kind of signals by saying, hey, X is a former user? Does that impact your decision at all?
I'm actually surprised how few people do it. Like, because I think what we do really well is this, like Blaise, you work with our VP of marketing to make sure that she connects with the marketing equivalent, for example, or we connect to users. And I'm checking how many messages am I getting. For example, if our RevOps is buying something, how many people reach out to me to see like, what does Christian actually care about? Or where maybe the CEO reaches out to me. And I feel like I can count on one hand the number of times this happened in the last 6 months. I'm actually very surprised how little it happens, because I think we've seen a lot of success with it.
You would think it happens more, because I feel like a theme on LinkedIn over the past couple of months has just been about multi-threading and these signals. So I'm surprised that it's that low.
Yeah, I think to me, it just shows that there is still a lot of potential for this. And ultimately, for anything sales and marketing related, we're always looking for what are the things that's not being done at mass yet, because that's where we have the advantage. And that's certainly one of them.
I think the key with it also is, if you did the thought experiment of imagine that whoever was selling that product, that seller reaches out directly to the CEO cold and just say, hey, by the way, just want to put this on your radar. We're talking to your team. That is counterproductive, because you're going around your champion. You can create some weird dynamics internally. So obviously that's not going to work. But what does work is when, like Christian, if you get pinged by someone, if you believe that someone cares about you and is trying to make you make a good decision, help you make a good decision, then you'll trust it. But if you feel like they're selling you on something and they have ulterior motive, then you'll be skeptical. So what the summary of all this is try to find people who can influence a deal that have authentic interests, like they want the best for their friends because they believe in this product. And I think that also is like good karma. Like UserGems wouldn't work if your product that you're selling is bad, because your users aren't going to be willing to recommend it. But if your product is good, then it will work great. It's a great strategy. So it's a good kind of like check and balance on product quality too.
Yeah. I like that. I would have said we're close to wrapping up. So any final thoughts or tips for the AEs on the call? Which you might have already just said it, Brian, but
One, just on this AI thing, I think there's just the drumbeat of AI fear, uncertainty, doubt is only going to get louder. So try to be aware of it. Try not to spend too much of your time like consternating about it. And just, I recommend getting productive, figuring out where you can use, AI is not all bad. Actually, I think AI is great for helping with signal identification. It's not great in terms of outreach and distribution of your message. So, figure out where you can apply it, but also like try to bring the humanity back to your sales process. And that was a big theme of what we talked about today.
I like that. Still be human in the sales process. Blaise?
I mean, he pretty much nailed it, Brian. The more you are yourself, I think people, they see authenticity, and people buy from people.
Once again, more than ever. Yeah, I think it's more than ever that this needs to shine and come through in your communication and in your messaging. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, the two of you. So if for the people listening, if you want to learn more, so we talked about Cabal and UserGems, you can grab the QR code here to learn more.
Cool. Thank you for hosting, Christian. Blaise, always great chatting with you guys. And yeah, good luck to everyone on the call. I know it's hard out there, but get creative with your strategies and you'll see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.